There we are. Verse Phil, if you'll do the reading for us. It's from the first letter of Peter, chapter 2, and it's verses 1 to 10. First letter of Peter, chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. A lovely opening. Chapter 1 then leads into chapter 2 there. Lovely. Phil?
Okay, 1 Peter 2, beginning verse 1 to verse 10. Wherefore, laying aside all malice, and all guile, and hypocrisies, and envies, and all evil speakings, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. If so be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious, to whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious. Ye also, as living stones, are built up a spiritual house and holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices, acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. Wherefore also it is contained in the Scriptures, Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believeth on him shall not be confounded. Unto you, therefore, which believe, he is precious. But unto them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner, and a stone of stumbling, and a rock of offence, even to them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, whereunto also they were appointed. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvellous light, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Amen.
Do you watch Pointless? Do you watch that? I think the week before. Sorry?
I don't see the point.
But week before last, there were a couple on, and he seemed a lovely fella, the guy that was with his, I think it was his wife, or they were girlfriends, fiance type of thing. And they got to the final, and of course Alexander, or my mate Xander, Alexander Armstrong always says, well, if you were to win the money, what would you do with it? And she was given the first option, so she said. And then it turned to him. And I noticed even Alexander Armstrong went a bit glassy-eyed with it. I certainly did. He said, what would you do with it? And he said, well, I forget what the lady's name was, just say the name was Betty. He said, Betty turned my life around. She helped me when I needed help. And so I'd like to give my half to her. And it was almost a religious warmth in it, to hear it, you know. And I love to read, not so much theological books in one sense. I've always said I've got a lazy mind in regards of that. I'm not a student, never have been a student, never will be a student, I don't think. But I love to read church history. I love to read about characters that have made up the history of the church. And you come across them sometimes, and they seem to have this devotion to Christ that seems deeper, higher, further, richer, warmer. I don't know what it is. I just finished one book, I've just lent it to Andrew now. He'd heard of him, but he'd never read his life. I mentioned it, I think, week before last, Jonathan Goforth. He was a missionary in China, a Canadian student that went to a missionary meeting and then felt the call of God. And tremendous. But the man was so devoted to the Lord. He loved him so deeply. God loved him deeply, and he in return loved God. It's very, very personal, it's very warm. And going through that, and one of the comments that Neil made about when Mary as well was opened up that alabaster box of ointment, when she opened that up, and a phrase that he used, or the subject itself, really took me to this chapter here. And it's really, I suppose, Beth will know now the title, Jesus, Precious, Costly. And the chorus is so succinct, it's so hitting it on the head, on the nail type of thing. Lord, you are more precious than silver. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Now, my fear when I was in those early days, just leading up to being converted to Christ, my fear was that religion was all about money. I remember me and Judith went to the church where we were thinking of having the wedding, and it was based solely on a place that was good for photographs. It had nothing to do with religion. We weren't religious in any way. And the minister sat us down and said, listen now, I'll put you straight, £25 to get married, £30 with bells. So I'll tell you what church it was then, if we didn't get Philly. And your dad mentioned it on the TV program he was on, Brass Tacks, just that year after, I think. But I thought that summed up exactly what I thought. I had a biased view of religion. And so it's not the giving that I'm talking about here now. You can give a little, but that little can be your all. And so we're not talking about pounds in the pockets. We're not talking about that now, but that's the way sometimes it expresses itself in both Old and New Testament. This realization of Christ being so precious, so costly, and you just want to honor him. You just want to make him smile, if it was possible to make him smile. And so this chorus, more precious, more costly. And this chapter gives us a heavenly view and an earthly view of Christ and of his value. The word precious crops up in Peter quite a few times, in both chapter 1, chapter 2, and then into 2 Peter it crops up again in chapter 1 there. Precious means a range of things. It is such a range. Highly valued, much prized, dear is another one. You remember the centurion whose servant was sick? It says, who was dear unto him, who was much prized by him. Dear in that regard. It means costly. It means honoured. It's got such a span of different words that come up. When it talks about the man that found the pearl of great price, that word, same word again, precious. Interestingly, most sermons preached will say that pearl is Christ. It can't be. It's set in between parables. It's all about Christ ministering to those in need. And you can't buy Christ. You can give your all if you want, but you're not going to save yourself by even giving your all. Though I give my body to be burned, it profits me nothing. And so it has to be. That pearl of great price is you. What a wonderful way in this world where we sometimes look in the mirror and we feel such low esteem of our self-esteem. Look in the mirror. I was walking down the hallway. It's not very sound if I got a big hallway, does it? But it's just a narrow hallway. I was painting. And I looked in the mirror and thought, oh, you look so haggard, man. I've been painting, it's like my food. I wear paint more than it goes on the wall, and I eat my food, and Judith is always telling me. Like my mother says, supposed to eat it, not wear it. And but just to know that you are that pearl of great price. You are that preciousness that he gave up everything for, that he was so diligent in searching for. And so let's have a little look. I want to look at the heavenly view of Christ, what heaven thinks of him, and then what the believer thinks of him, and then we'll end up where Neil took us a week before last in John chapter 12, or I think last week perhaps that he took us there. But let's have a little look. This is what the Father thinks about him now. In chapter 2, verse 4. It says, him being rejected by men, but chosen of God and precious. They're lovely. Chosen of God and highly valued. It's a lovely way to put it, isn't it? To him, the Son was precious, so highly valued. And then it goes on in the verses, it talks about, in verse 6, a chief cornerstone, elect, which again means chosen, elect, precious. And that verse there is taken from something that Isaiah said in Isaiah 28. And it just narrows it down, it makes it more succinct, makes it more direct. But in Isaiah 28 verse 16 he says, a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone. This word precious, it means rare. We talk about TV programs again now. Antiques Roadshow. You know the one on there, they have it on a Sunday night. And you've got these ones, they're absolutely passionate about their subject. You've got the one guy that's passionate about jewellery. The other guy that's got that lady that makes that made the jugs, the pottery down in Cornwall. And then you've got the guy with the glass that's fanatical about Lalique, the French designer for glass. But the one I love to watch, if he's there, I sit down straight away and just watch him and listen to him. I'm watching him sometimes just for the results. It's the one that looks at the medals. Have you seen it? And he talks about the medals, and he loves it when the history that is attached to those medals comes across. And he's in there with him. And there's been times when his upper lip has quivered, and he's been gone glassy-eyed when he's been talking. He's so into it. And he was asked on one occasion with this one family that brought these medals, and the story that was in there with it, the log that was there about flights going in and out. And he said, really, when we come to price this, you can't really price it. He said, I could put a figure on it, but that figure will never do it justice. And that's what this word precious here in Isaiah, it means rare. You understand the links now, isn't it? Rare, highly valued, much prized, dear, those type of things. We see that the way that this relationship between the Father and the Son is expressed in these terms of value, of esteem, of honour. And so we find with this here that it's beyond price. In fact, one of the translations use it when we come to the believer's view of Christ, that it's inestimable. I can't quite get my tongue around it, but you know what I mean. You really can't calculate the value, the worth that's there. There's something beyond just a monetary term. There's something physical, emotional, spiritual attached into it that you just can't put it into words. Ron Jones came to Caerphilly many, many years ago and taught us that chorus. There are no words to say how much I love you. When he taught us that chorus, a beautiful opening line to a chorus. And so here we have this rarity that is Christ himself. There's no one else like him. There's no one else like him. I wonder how Moses felt when the Lord will raise up a prophet like me. That he felt able to compare himself. And you wonder how Moses might have reflected on that after. Especially when he met Christ on the mountain, when he saw him in his glory and his beauty, there on Mount Transfiguration. Raise up unto you a prophet like unto me. You know, it says it's the value that heaven bestows upon Christ. Isaiah 42 says this, behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one, in whom my soul delights. I've put my spirit upon him. That's the measure of it, you know. That was the testimony, that was the sign of that special day at his baptism when he was baptized. And the heavens opened as Jesus prayed in the water, as he came out of the water on the banks. And it says, and Jesus prayed. We're not told what that prayer was, but in answer to that prayer, the heavens had opened. And down came the Spirit of God in the form of a dove. A flaming fire that came down and sat and dwelt upon him. Never left him. Never, never, never left him. And so we find, you hear the voice of God speaking again. This is my much loved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. I'm absolutely chuffed with him. I'm so well pleased. And so we find this relationship. I think Jesus quoted in John, the Father loves the Son. And vice versa as well. But we're talking of the direction going towards the Lord Jesus. So we have that. We have precious, we have highly valued, we have dear, much prized, we have rare, we have honoured. That word, when it says in the book of Revelation chapter 5, when it talks of blessing, honour, glory, power, wisdom, that word honour means precious or preciousness. Be unto him that sits upon the throne and unto the Lamb. And so he is precious, precious in heaven. That's how much they think about it. To the believer, verse 7, it says this, to you who believe, he is precious. And really, I said about the thing about the Antiques Roadshow, but this one I should have been talking about the Antiques Roadshow now, because that's what that word means. It means inestimable value. It's very often translated like this. He is preciousness. He is preciousness itself. And it's this relationship that Christ has with his people. I read it in Goforth's life. I've come across it just from time to time. I've come across that utter devotion to Christ. Utter devotion to him. And here, he is preciousness. And then you look at the believer's view of Christ. And it talks there of, in chapter 1 of 1 Peter, he says, you were not redeemed with corruptible things, as silver and gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb without blemish. It means the costly blood of Christ. The costly blood of Christ. Looking at his sacrifice, Paul repeats the same type of phrase in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and chapter 7. He says simply this, you were bought with a price. And that's that word, honour or preciousness, or precious again. You were bought with a costly, with a precious, precious death. And so we see that Christ is so important to the believer, so important. Phil in his song, it's not about what I feel, not about what I say, but it's all about what you are and who you are. And you are precious. Lord, you are more precious than silver, more costly than gold. The believer can have this within the heart, a burning, burning desire to give all to him. 1 Peter 1 talks like this, that even our faith, talks in chapter 1 of our faith, says this, it is much more precious than gold. That's a Maureen Brock phrase, that is. She would always talk about the much mores. Romans 6, the much mores that are found in there. The Hebrew, the much more that would be in there. And here's another one. Your faith is much more precious than gold. Remember how many times I've said to you over the years, isn't it? When I used to say to my mother, who's your best friend? No, man, I haven't got a best friend, boy. The best friend you've got is the pound in your pocket. But your faith is more precious than gold. More precious than gold. For those of you who don't know, my mother got hurt with her closest friend when she was young. Never allowed people to step over that mark again. Once bitten, twice shy. Never allowed herself to step over that mark again, to commit herself in a friend's way now. She got hurt once, I don't know who it was, what it was, but she never stepped beyond that mark again. She would do anything for a lot of people, but she would not commit herself in that way. She made the terrible mistake. The pound in your pocket is your closest friend. But no, you're wrong, man. You're wrong, man. And so we find here that our faith is more precious than gold. It talks there that you have, in chapter 1 of 2 Peter, we looked at it on Tuesday night, you have obtained like precious faith. It means you have obtained faith of equal value with us. The same faith we had on the day of Pentecost is the same faith that the people had. And it's the same faith that you have. Like precious faith. You rank yourselves with the apostles as believers. Same precious faith. And so we look at this, the esteem that Christ has from heaven and from earth with the believers. So we come in closing to the stint with Mary and in John chapter 3. And it simply says this: Mary took a pound of oil of spikenard, very costly. It means very precious. Very precious. It's used in a term that it has reached its limit or its end. She could not give any more. That's it. We think of that lady, the poor widow. It's a few people that are challenged with this type of thing. The young rich ruler. We'd all love to be young. And in one sense, we'd all love to be rich. And in another sense, we all love to be ruler. To have control. To be the boss, but not be. He had all that. But when the challenge came to give up for Christ, he walked away disappointed. Walked away disappointed. Even though he'd done all those commandments that Jesus had challenged him with. There was one that he was lacking. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, with all your strength. And he turned away. Then we come to the widow lady that put her farthing into the box. And Jesus said, now listen now. There's been a lot of rattling going on with coins going down into the treasure box. But he said, that little tinkle that you heard there, that was her all going in there. She's given more than all they together. Now here with Mary, a younger version now, she's in the same spirit. Because she has come to the end or limit of what she could give. And she could give no more after that. Very precious, very costly, very honourable, very dear, much valued. All those words can go into there. And we find with Mary that she had this wonderful spirit, that she could not give anymore. It brought a great, great joy. As Neil said, it can be misunderstood sometimes. The efforts that you make to serve the Christ. It can be misunderstood, it can be criticized, it can be looked harshly upon. But in her heart, and in the heart of Christ, there was complete union here. This is not something that is suddenly clicked in her mind that she's not going to get a chance. No. The word, if you read the sentence and you go into your concordance, have a look at the phrases used. She has made this decision quite a while back. She's kept this for this day. That word kept there is a big, big word here. And it's not something that is just, sometimes you can do something off the cuff, isn't it? And it's lovely. You get that moment, little moment where it twigs and you think, oh, it's great. This is something that she had in her heart for some time. It didn't happen on the night. She'd been planning this, holding it there. when it comes. Everybody else misunderstood it. John tells us that it was Judas at the heart of it. Matthew and Mark tell us that all of them got involved in it. That's the influence sometimes that can happen, isn't it? One bad apple, like. One bad apple, that's all it takes. And it can set off a whole mountain of things running off. But between her and Christ, there was this acknowledgement that this was precious. This was her all. How are you? Is he precious to you? From what he's rescued you from. If you were on Pointless now, what would you say? Would you say like that chap, you know, she was so good to me. When I couldn't turn it around, she turned it around for me. I give my heart to her. And Xander glassy-eyed, Martin glassy-eyed, is just a lovely picture of devotion to Christ. May we be a people that see his preciousness. You are precious to him. You're precious to him. You can go home tonight and look in the mirror if you want, and you might not think, well, there's nothing much to look at there, but you're precious. As much as you sing, Lord, you are more precious than silver, Lord, you are more costly than gold, he could say the same to you without the word Lord in it. You are precious as silver, more costly than gold. So go home tonight, look in the mirror, and say, God loves me. And your spirit, I trust, will be refreshed and helped.